Am I right about that?
Yes, that's correct.
And so
September
what,
1.
pardon me?
September 1.
So what were you told when you were being hired about this Raystown Dam project and what your role was going to be?
Nothing. No, when I came as the executive director, the focus of HB&I was always economic and industrial development for the county as well as for Huntingdon proper. So we were concerned about one word, jobs, J-O-B-S. We were running well beyond the 6% unemployment rate, and there was a feeling that people need jobs, and how could we get jobs and what could we do? I think probably the lake was another arrow in the quiver of amenities that the community could offer to prospective employers who may want to relocate here. During that time, there was a lot of competition. And I'll just give you one example of competition. When we'd get the flyers in from companies and they ask you questionnaire on what you had in your county or in your area to build something, and they would be questioning you, we'd get questionnaires into the office. But in addition to that, it was looking at what amenities you have to offer employees that are there, what type of workforce do you have, what is important. And if you look at it from this perspective, it was probably a very positive thing for the county to have Lake Raystown as just another quiver in our saleability. You know, in other words, when you a salesman opened up his portfolio, there's more and more things there. But the other thing is the state of Ohio was unique in itself. We were competing nationwide as far as jobs was concerned. And if I was the executive director in Ohio, and I had a prospective individual wanting to come to it, I could call the governor's office in Ohio, and the governor's office would send the airplane out to pick up the person and fly him to the locale, number one. And they would fly him into the area where they had it. The second thing that they had, also, in Ohio, every county has an airport. So you were fighting against those things, that other amenities that other communities had. So that was one of the things that I think was brought about. Incidentally, before I stop, there's a gentleman over here who was very instrumental in this Raystown dam dedication. He's sitting over here. Gary Moore, who was the first ranger at Raystown during the time of the dedication. And over to my left over here is a man by the name of Joe Biddle, whose father was instrumental in the dedication. I want to recognize Joe being there because Joe, he was very instrumental. Incidentally, he was the guy who had a boat livery at that point in time. I don't know if he still does, but he put a boat up for a hole-in-one for the Boy Scout fundraiser, which I was chairman of for a golf tournament down in Mount Union. So I want to recognize those two guys. And if there's any JCs here, former JCs, I'd love to meet you because I was very active, because this location right here, the dinner bell, come Fair Week, I was there working in the dinner bell, swapping hamburgers or doing something like that. So, and my wife was cooking a soup or something like that at home. So this is home. We can be in here, and the industrial park right across the street. Wow, that's so I'm very much at home here.
So we think of the lake now as this huge draw for tourists from all over, not just local people as an amenity for somebody who gets hired here. Was that how business people were thinking of it when you were hired? Did they anticipate the huge draw that it has become today?
Within a year, HB&I was instrumental in organizing the first Huntingdon County Tourist Promotion Agency, which would be eligible to receive state funds from the Department of Commerce. And my successor, Chris Humble, when he left here, he went down to that agency, which was, of course, state promotion. But in fact, I can honestly say I was one of the incorporators who signed the incorporation papers for that when the first Huntingdon County Tourist Promotion Agency. And now you have a great guy by the name of Matt Price over there who does a marvelous job at the borough over there.
But you all did not necessarily anticipate the growth that ensued in terms of tourism.
I wouldn't say that. It was at an infancy state. There was limited campsites, and at that point in time, it was growing. We had 7 points out there and a couple other sites, but for the most part, it was a lot of tent camping out there, and we recognized it because my family, in fact, if you listen to my wife, she got introduced to tent camping. I was a Boy Scout, so I didn't have any problems with tent camping. But the first night I took her out tent camping, we had one horrific thunderstorm. Oh, it was terrific. And after 2 big storms came over, she says, let's go home. So we drove back to Huntingdon and then came back in the morning after the storm. But to tell you the significance of the storm, 2 of our neighbors who did a lot of camping neighbors there, and the one guy said, you know, I thought this morning I was going to be waking up as a crispy critter. So that's how it was. It was a horrendous storm.
Was the dedication plan pretty much from the time that you got here? You knew there was going to be a dedication, or how long did you have to set that up?
I don't know. I would suggest that there was plans by the Corps of Engineers to have a dedication. And I think the big thing was once they set the date, then we were working back from that particular date. Now, it also ties in the selection of who was selected. And this is where you get into political history a little bit. Spiro Agnew, who was the vice president, resigned on October 10th. Okay? So they had to appoint a vice president to take Spiro Agnew's place because he got into problems in office. So of that, on December 6th, Gerald Ford became the vice president of the United States. So here we are, December 6th, June 6th. Moving it forward, you also had the background of President Nixon being in problems, and the heir apparent would be the vice president. So, and June 6th was the dedication, and the Gerald Ford became president on August 9th. So within 60-some days after he dedicated a dam, we had the President of the United States in Gerald Ford. So during that time, also, there was a lot of back and forth, whether he was available because of all the background that was not visible to the people. But I used to get reports back, what's the chance of him coming? What's the chance? 50%, 60%, 40%, and it would go by days or weeks that we get different numbers.
And you mentioned that there were some other people who were eager to be the chief speaker at that event, who would have been just as happy if Ford had been unavailable.
Yes.
I don't want to get us in
no,
too much trouble with our...
No, this is history. So, you know, I don't, you can talk about history, you can't talk about the current, but we can talk about history. One person that was very interested in doing it was the Senate Minority Leader. Had to be Hugh Scott, who's from Pennsylvania. However, during the time of any of the fundraising and going to Washington for money for the dam, which some of the people from HB&I did to secure funding to build the dam, he wasn't interested in doing anything for it. And Joe Clark, who was defeated by Richard Schweiker just before this, it was Congressman Wally and Senator Joe Clark, who were really pushing to make this happen, to get the money for the dam. Hugh Scott, he used to refer to Raisintown Dam as a raisin town, like the Scribble grape. So that was what he thought, that he should be the main speaker of it. And I think he was hurt because then we offered him second slot to do the dedication luncheon at the VFW afterwards, which had 300 people there, and he refused to do it. And then, let's see, about 3 days before the event, I get a call at home. I think it was a Sunday night. And it was from Bob Hetherington, who was the press secretary for Hugh Scott. And he said, can the senator say something at the dedication? And I said, you know, I have a great committee. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to make that decision. That was beyond my pay grade, guys. So anyway, I called the committee and they said, yes, he can speak for the committee. Great volunteers, incidentally. The volunteers that we had running this, starting with our chairman, Bob Anderson, Art Neary, Marshall Showalter. Some of these people really, they were dedicated to the nth degree and committed to a mission to make this the best thing for our community. I can't, and everyone who served on the committee was willing to do the extra thing. They went the extra mile. They didn't sit back and was complacent, oh, it's the other guy or the other guy. No, if they got the assignment, they went for it. And I never worked with a better group of people, and I worked with nonprofit organizations most of my life. Most of my life has been spent as executive directors of organizations or assistant directors or whatever. But I always worked with nonprofit organizations for the majority of my life. So the people here in Huntingdon were so dedicated to this, to make it happen, to make us proud to be a part of Huntingdon. And I say that honestly, it's beyond comprehension. So anyway, make a long story short, we went ahead and we allowed him to speak, and he spoke at the opening remarks at the dedication.
And you have a number of other surprising things to learn about hosting a vice president. If I recall correctly, there had to be a backup helicopter site, and then there was the question of whether the road up the backside of the dam was good enough for a vice president to be driven on?
There are many backstories, but the classic is that, let's see, the first one was with the
helicopter landing.
Okay, we had to have 2 helicopter sites because we had 2 sites, actually. One was at Juniata College for the gym, and one was at the crest of the dam. Well, that's okay, that's fine. You can have those, but the interesting thing is surprises. Well, we need a telephone on the field where it's on the land, where the helicopter's on land up by Juniata College. So so we had to make sure that a telephone was there at the landing site. One day, the Secret Service picked me up, got me in a car, and we went up to Juniata College together. And we go, and the landing site was already selected. And I'm hearing from reliable sources that Secret Service were in here as soon as there was a potential of him coming, which would be probably February or March there. They were already in Huntingdon County looking at everything. So we're in this Continental, large Continental, which we'd be using for the president, and we're going over this land, back and forth with the car, over this bumpy field. They're testing if it's okay if it's a landing site. Okay, then we go into the gymnasium, and they're scoping it out, where the entry point would, where everything else. These guys, the Secret Service, and I tell you that you should be glad you have the Secret Service, because they are professionals. These guys are amazing, and I think they're even amazing to this day, because they are protecting many, many people from those who would want to do harm to them. So my hat's off to the Secret Service. But more important than that, early on, one of the things that was great is the Pennsylvania State Police were on the committee with us. So they were doing things like that. Another surprise, incidentally, according to Mayor Stauffer of Altoona at that point in time, Raystown was in Blair County. Yes, you heard it here first. No, I'm serious. His idea was, and he was trying to sell this idea, that they would land at Blair County Airport, and then he would be in a motorcade with the president to the dam site. That was shortly shot down, not only by the state police, but by the Secret Service, the FBI, and every other law enforcement agency around. That was not going to happen, but he wanted to make sure that it was, he thought it was part of Huntingdon County, or part of Blair County. And that's just a side note that you pick up when you work with these people sometimes.
But you were going to tell us about the road paving.
Oh, yes. Juniata Township, where you go to get to the dam, you know, there was a road that led back to the dam site. It was a spring breaker. I mean, we had springs in cars then before shocks, or you had some shocks, but you had springs. It was a spring breaker. I mean, you hopped along in the road because you hit the ruts. Well, everything was, well, it's not, PennDOT says, not my job. Juniata Township, not my job. Huntingdon County, not my job. And all of a sudden, the president's coming, and miraculously, I don't know where the order came down. There was graders out. It was the smoothest road, dirt road you ever saw. I mean, they worked it out, but it was one of those interesting miracles that happened overnight.
That's excellent. Jude, do you want to tell us what the future of Raystown looks like now, and also anything else you want to tell us about what all has transpired in the past 50 years?
Well, before I get to that, I wanted to copy or segue something off of Bob, but I was doing a dam tour. We're standing at the pagoda, and the plaque's right there, and it says Vice President Ford was there to dedicate right there on that site on June 6, 1974. So I'm telling him that, and about the speech that he gave, and he stood there talking about the magnificent engineering marvel that was before them. Great big dam, these huge gates with all this water behind it. And one person asked me, well, like usually a president would dedicate something like that. Why did you have the vice president? And I quickly said, well, the Vice President Nixon was back in Washington dealing with his own water gates. I don't want to insult anybody, but when I told that, the only ones who laughed were older people. So, So anyway, that just thanks Bob for that segment. Okay, so not quite sure where to start. I guess since it's all about the dam this week and the results and everything from that, I do want to tell you that the Corps is spending a lot of money on upgrading the structure. So it's 50 years old. 3 years ago we started working on our tainer gates, the big gates above the spillway, all new electric, all new mechanical, all new hydraulic. I mean, 50 years has been a lot of improvements. Things are more digitized, and that's the first phase. What they're going to be starting next, probably over the winter, will be mobilizing with a contractor to work on the tower. The tower is in that ungated emergency spillway. I don't know if you know, there's a tunnel underneath from the riverbed all the way to the riverbed. That's what we use to divert the lake. And we were able to get into that for the first time in 50 years. It's actually in pretty good condition. But they're going to replace everything in the tower. And in the third phase, probably 3 or 4 years from now, is downstream. There's been a lot of erosion. There's some islands that shouldn't be there. And they'll be removed, and all the stream banks, shoreline, everything will be put back in place so it'll look like it did 50 years ago. So really going forward, when you think about it, for the next 50 years, the dam structure is really going to be in good shape. So now you talk about the lake. Want to talk a little bit about the lake?
You could talk about the lake and your environmental management responsibilities, because I think people think of you as the guy who's in charge of making sure that the water level is right for boating. That's his job.
Yeah, that's all we do. This is
That's all you do.
a boating destination lake, and our job is to keep it ready for boating. Yeah.
Right, but you also just recently had a whole bunch of floodwater in there, and when you're not worrying about boats or floodwater, you're worrying about invasive species and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, I think, well, we really have 3 missions. We have the flood damage reduction, or flood control, as you probably know it. That's our primary mission. The next mission that's most obvious is our recreation mission, and hats off to people like Matt and his crew, just supporting us and helping us move forward. What helps our recreation programs and our stewardship programs are all the partners we have. But the one thing that flies under the radar, and we got into a nice discussion about this, was our environmental stewardship, or our environmental program. And right now we do timber harvesting. We manage the land. To manage the land, you cut trees. We're not cutting trees to make money. We're cutting it to manage the resources for all kinds of wildlife, including golden-winged warblers, and the list is long. So you're doing that, but when the trees are cut, that money actually comes back to the Raystown project to use specifically for environmental stewardship. So when you both pass the shoreline real quick, you don't see up there, but there's probably a timber cut here and there. It's kind of hidden. You also don't see the wildlife food plots that are put out there. And we have different target species, not just deer and turkey, but a lot of other species. We have the money that we make on our timber cuts, which probably averages about $150,000 a year. It's not really in our budget. It's what we can use to enhance the environment. One thing that we got lucky with, COVID was a bad thing, but Raystown actually did pretty well in COVID, believe it or not, because we're an outdoor recreation area. People came, our visitation jumped from 1.2 million to 1.5 million, and there was a lot of people out really enjoying the outdoors. But we had a timber cut that we were estimating to be worth $110,000 or $120,000. But if you remember in COVID, lumber prices, it jumped to like $300,000 is what we got for it. So we made way more than we thought. And that money, we then partnered with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we rehabilitated wetlands below the dam at Corbin's Island, and then the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service designed and constructed, when we gave them money, a wetland below the dam. We don't just kind of work with the Fish and Wildlife Service, everything is always connected with other partners. In this case, Juniata College and Dr. Roy Nagel were very big in turtle management, and we have turtle management all through the wetlands, turtle mounds, research. If you see a turtle with an antenna going around on it, I'm not kidding. That's because they're being tracked in their movements. So the wildlife part of it has been very good. We work closely with the Fish and the Pennsylvania Game Commission. They have 3,000 acres on our land. They help us with control burns, so we'll do fire management after a timber cut or sometimes before it. And Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, if you've noticed the shoreline, it takes a beating. So we actually, Sunoco was a very difficult time for us, what they went through.